Hey, yo, what's up? It's Ismail Abrams, the DJ man. And today we're talking about the origin of Sunday Soul Sessions, where it all began in South Africa, who were the role players, so to speak, and what experiences have come out of Sunday Soul Sessions, the R&B Soul Sessions. Loads of other names that have come up during the course of the year, but the original, the legendary name still stands, Sunday Soul Sessions. It's a huge, huge movement in South Africa. So now, today we just want to figure out and try pinpoint or give our personal experiences on where it all started. On the panel this afternoon with me is Paul Mtirara and Amon Mokoena, legends in the R&B soul circuit currently in South Africa. For the last, 20 years, gentlemen?
Not shorter.
For the last 20 years. Before we get into it and get each one's personal experience, something I found that gives us a historic background when it comes to soul music. Soul music, often referred to as the foundation of black music, represents a profound culture and historical significance emerging from the depths of African American experiences. Soul music is also amalgamation of gospel, rhythm and blues, and jazz. These genres deeply rooted in black experience. The emergence came out back in 1950 and the early 60s, coincided with the civil rights movement, making it not just a musical genre, but as well as a voice for social change and a platform for expressing struggles and hopes of black Americans. Hence, it took off so huge in South Africa because you can see the connection South Africans had with soul music from the 60s into the 70s.
For me, quickly, it was, like you're speaking of the 50s and the 60s, my parents literally connected me to that kind of music, soul and R&B, and my love for music led me to being on radio. Hence, I'm now working alongside, fine gentlemen as you, because it's basically, the connection that you were talking about. It's basically the understanding of the music and the emotion that is evoked by the content of the music. So it's music that you cannot ignore. You cannot, put aside while you're cleaning up or you're busy with whatever it is that you're doing at home. You cannot ignore that kind of music. It'll always touch your soul. So my connection starts from there. Before I actually met you guys, it was basically from home with parents and all that. Yeah.
For me, when I get to listen to your guys' story, it's quite nice because you were, I think, in the music thing. I never was. It was an absolute mistake. It was never part of my journey. It was a mistake, a complete mistake. And the mere fact that I'm sitting here, I'm like, wow. Sometimes they say that the Lord leads you in mysterious ways. Yeah. This is the most mysterious way ever because it was never my intention. I never listened to soul and R&B. I thought it was absolutely horrible. A friend of mine used to play it at school, and I'm like, does this man have to play this? And it got sadder every hour. And to a point, I used to just like, no, I can't take it anymore. I just go and walk in the garden. I never enjoyed soul music. And then when I joined radio, they just said, you got a voice for Sunday. I'm like, okay, whatever. It's just a job. And that's how for me started. So I really want to honestly tell you, this was never planned. It was never for the love of music. I hated soul and R&B. I just liked other choice of music, and somehow someone just said to me, "You have to be on Sunday," and that's how it rolled for me.
You see, it goes back once again to the connection. It may have, exactly. It may have taken longer for you, but look at where you are right now, and
connected.
Look at the connection will always be there, and look at what Paul does basically when he's on stage. So it doesn't even look like. You never had the interest in the music at all in the beginning.
So, judging from what you're saying is very important because before radio started in 1976 in South Africa, soul and R&B music was being played. Soul and R&B music was a lifestyle that was being connected with mostly black communities in South Africa and the so-called colored and Indian communities as well. And there's a huge point I need to make later on when it comes to on how we consumed soul and R&B music as different race groups. Black people consumed it differently to Indian and Khalid. Khalid and Indian people consumed soul music almost identical. So when we look at the origin of Sunday Soul Sessions, it was there already. The lifestyle was happening in households around South Africa every evening and mostly on Sunday, straight after church or going to church, that you'd play soul music coming from the gospel era.
You know, just to add to that, I think soul music was I think it's something that they just naturally did on a Sunday.
Yeah.
You know, you came back and you heard in the vinyl and it played and played and played. And then your mom will tell you that's when back in the day she was dating this guy and that guy, and then your dad will come and say, "But I'm the man now," you know. Mm-hmm. So I figured that's where it became a lifestyle, because it was played in the background. And then guess what? Then radio adopted to it because they took DJs from the community, and the DJs reflected what the community wanted, and then it became into a radio mainstream.
Exactly. And now, if you look at the programming since radio started in '76 to this date, that programming on black radio, 9 to midday weekdays, 9 to midnight weekdays, and then Sunday. That genre of music, those hours was always equated to soul R&B.
So, would you take us to how they programmed radio for different races, like you said, giving an example about Khalids and Indians?
For example, before radio made it popular, soul and R&B, in the discos, so to speak, the clubs, disco back then, they used to play slow jams in the club. Because when you used to dance to the funk and the disco music, round about midnight or so, the DJ would have slowed down the music, and then you'd hear the most popular songs, soul music and R&B come through in the club. So they were playing it already. And then when radio came and it said, you're catering for black radio then went with programming via the lifestyle. Mm-hmm. What people, as you said, whatever DJs were doing already, they just put it back on air. And then when it came to consuming music, there were different songs on the album. For example, Teddy Pendergrass album. Black people would have consumed different to what colored and Indian people would have chosen. Like, oh, this is my favorite Teddy Pendergrass from that album. This is my favorite Luther from that album. And you'd hear it on when they play it in the hood, in the clubs. A difference. And then, when you look at the origin of soul music, and when did soul music, as you said, soul music started as a social message, so to speak. Like if you listen to Lou Rawls back then, Marvin Gaye, there was a social message to it. Aretha Franklin, there was a social message to it. And then when the civil rights movement eased out, so to speak, then you saw more love. I love you. You broke my heart. My heart is aching. I want to love you. Kind of words come into soul music.
Yeah.
And then, which brought the explosion of soul and R&B.
I want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
When do you think soul music became very, very popular? Was it the 80s? The 90s? I have a funny feeling that the 90s was the best period of R&B and soul. But I do believe that the 80s planted the seed for the 90s.
Just like every decade, borrow, soul, if not the message, to the next decade.
Yes.
So say the 90s, they borrow from the 80s and the 70s. The 70s borrow from. So basically, according to what I know, most of the hits that we even play today, an easy example would be the Spinners' Easy Come, Easy Go. That song is from the 70s and it's a hit. Even today, even young ones enjoy it and they know it because it kept on moving from decade to decade. So I don't know if I answered you.
Look, I also think that the most commercialized period of R&B and soul was the 90s.
Yeah.
Boyz II Men, Babyface, Tony Braxton, Tamia, the Luthers, the Whitneys and all that type of stuff. And I figure that's where the love for the craft grew a lot differently. But also I think then the craft kind of changed. I think then the message was more, how can I say, more commercialized. It was more focus driven. But, when I get to listen to a Teddy Pendergrass song, Teddy Pendergrass song was like 13 minutes. Imagine being on stage for 13 minutes performing one song. Now imagine what that does at night when someone switches off the lights for 13 minutes with one song or the whole LP. So I said that's why soul music is so generational, because a particular generation made the next generation while listening to a 13-minute song.
Exactly, yeah. That is true. That is true. So, like they normally say, a whole lot of babies were born to a particular song, right? Yeah. Another example that's a long song is "I Stand Accused" as a case. That's another, he's literally talking about, you spoke about love, more love was introduced to music. He's talking about being accused as in, I didn't do this, I didn't do that to cheat on you, whatever, but you still say I did it. It's a message which took like more than 9 minutes, right? I wanted to ask you a question. I don't know if, it's an appropriate question to answer first, but
That's the question.
the question is, when radio introduced DJs from the different societies into the lineups and all that, were they only introducing hits, R&B and soul hits onto the stations, or were they introducing new music as well?
I think it's actually both, and I'll tell you why. You'll get one particular DJ that came from a particular era, and within that area, it was that song. So he brought his sound into that area, and then chances are it was a hit. And then you'll get to find a guy from Durban, where a different song from that album was then introduced into a playlist. Yeah. And then you'll get a guy from Cape Town, because Cape Town's got a massive historical understanding of R&B, because they had their own boy bands way back in the day. So everybody, I think, to a point, yes or no. I think one guy most probably brought in a hit, the other guy from a different area brought in a different hit from that album. Yeah. And then your knowledge grew. And I always say this, I think we all learned music from our aunts and uncles.
That's true.
It was never from it was from a DJ, but it was more, how can I say, more ingrained in the back of our minds from an aunt, from an uncle, because they would play it and you're like, I know that song.
Yeah. So then that means music programmers for different radio stations needed to have a vast knowledge of music.
Yes, they did, but they never did. And it was left up to DJ. But I think it was also, and then I think what happened over time is that then surveys started to get into play. Then market segmentation started to get into play. Then the people that were not too knowledgeable about music would then say, no, we have to go with a format now. And then the format kind of restricted you because they thought they had an understanding. I worked for a radio station once, and they brought a guy from Australia to tell us how we play soul and R&B on a Sunday. And he gave us a list of 10 songs that we should play. And then we played it amongst all the DJs. And then he said, okay, choose your list of 10 songs. Yeah. I want to ask you that question. Who do you think had the greater response?
The great response in terms of artists? Or?
No, in terms of the two playlists. So he had his playlist from Australia, and we had a playlist amongst the DJs that were sitting there.
Our playlist.
That's it. That's what music is about. It's a personal connection.
Yeah.
With that said, Paul, to get into why we're here today, my personal, and then we'll go one by one. My personal, we're trying to get, now we get to our personal recollection. The furthest you can go back to see where and who introduced you, or you picked up to say, okay, soul and R&B started there, in my personal opinion. For me, it would go back to Capital Radio days. There was a guy called Oscar Renzi that used to be on nighttime, 7 to 10 on Capital Radio. And this was back in the late 80s, right? 86, 87-ish. I think, if my math serves me right, I was barely even learning music myself or knowing what music is, around 10, 11 years old. So with that, for me personally, hearing R&B and soul music on Capital Radio at night with Oscar Renzi, and then Ukosi FM on Sundays. Born and raised in Durban. So Ukosi FM, when you visiting friends and family out and about, and everyone would be playing Ukosi FM on Sundays, and you'd hear the strong element of gospel fused with soul and R&B, right? Now, with that said, the music that came out there was very, very, remembering that we South Africans at that time, the late 70s, 80s, we consumed music purely from the UK and the US, but mostly the UK R&B and American music, but it was mostly from the UK. And then that you'd hear in the hood first, then you'd hear it on the radio. And somehow, when radio became popular, it overtook the hood, because now they would have gotten it first via the record companies to play the music. And that's where radio became popular with the genre, especially when it comes to R&B and soul.
You guys are lucky, eh? That never happened to me at all. I stayed overseas. Remember, we were part of the struggle family, so we had to leave when we were very young. So we never had that. So, my overseas journey was in Switzerland. So, and there was just a hip hop culture that was growing there. So I had MTV Raps, I had MTV Soul, and it's just one of those things that
And when you landed in South Africa,
then landed in South
your
Africa. It was more of the Method Mans and all the hip hop stuff, the Major Blige.
radio guys,
I
radio station.
I never listened to radio. I kid you not. I arrived. I looked at Ora Tambo. I jumped on the next flight and went down to the Eastern Cape. And then as soon as I got to the Eastern Cape, there was a gentleman who was in Excel with us, who was running the state radio station then, and he was like, "You have got a voice for radio. We kind of heard you talking on radio." I don't know where he did. And he said, "Please come work at CKI." And I just started at CKI. I don't really care about the playlist. I just came in and I pressed this and played music. It was only when I decided to leave and when the Metro FM door started to open. And then they said to me, "Look here, you've got two alternatives. Either you go to Saturday or you go to Sunday. So pick and choose." So I'm like saying to them, "Okay, I don't know what happens on Sunday. Regardless, it was just a day." I said, "No, let me take both the days. I'm fine," because I wanted more money. And then they said, "Eddie Zone and Wilson is." I'm like, "I don't know who these people are."
Wow.
I never. And then voila, you just walked into Wilson. You walked into to Eddie, and from there, then I started to. Okay, now I need to learn how to do this thing.
So for you four,
I'm sure Aim's a lot different.
I mean, yeah. You see, our stories are quite different because he mentioned UK R&B. With me, I grew up on American R&B.
Me too.
Strictly American R&B.
Me too.
UK R&B, I picked up myself as I learned, the genre and the type of sound that I wanted to hear.
Name one UK artist, R&B artist.
Eternal.
Yes, Craig David.
Craig David, you see,
yeah.
you pick them up as you go along. But mainly for me it was the US R&B, and I never used to listen to radio as well. The only introduction to radio for me was my dad. He was on radio, so that's when I got introduced to radio. by simply asking questions because I didn't understand how radio worked. So 1 minute he's here, 1 minute he's not, but his voice was at home. So I needed to understand how that worked. And he started because he saw the interest in the I guess the medium. He started bringing music back home. They used to sample them because it was on air. So he started bringing music back home. At the time, it was vinyls, records, and then that grew into CDs. And I don't know if you guys remember mini discs. Yeah. And there were mini discs. So he used to bring all those things back at home just for me to consume the music. Different artists he introduced to me. And my brother as well was one of those. He literally listened just to fusion and soul. So most of his soul favorite artists, Teddy Pendergrass, you mentioned Teddy Pendergrass. He used to love a lot of Luther Vandross. Females, he appreciated Anita Baker. So he introduced me to a different kind, because my dad came in with the 70s and the 80s, and my brother brought in the late 80s, and I introduced them to the 90s. Like all the boy bands, your Boys to Men, your Shies, your For Examples, your Classic Example, all of those, and the girl bands as well. I introduced them to those. So we shared music in that way.
So with that said, when it comes to South Africa, when I said the consumption, especially from a KZN point of view, Durban, was remember on how the music went like this. In the 60s, 70s was mostly bands. 80s, singles, artist. 90s, back to bands. And then solo artists out into 2000s, so to speak. And it was a phenomenon for music artists to if the band was very popular, to now have singles careers out of there. So with now coming back to, where did Sunday Soul Session start? Then it's like, okay, catch so and so Sunday. What is your earliest recollection to go, oh, some DJ is playing there on Sunday and he's playing that slow music?
May I just digress just a little bit? I want to go back to Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I will come back to your question, Paul. I'm intrigued by your life and how it came about and how you connected to the music and the radio and all that. I'm intrigued by that. And now you mentioned now that when they said there's Wilson being Gozi, there's Eddie Zondi, and you're part of the Sunday lineup, and you didn't know what you had.
Really?
What happened when it clicked and you realized, wow, I'm literally sitting on a, for lack of a better phrase, gold mine?
Look, it never dawned upon me, really. Between Wilson and Zondi, it was never, I'm older than you, or, we've been doing this.
Yeah.
It was never the case. I think what happened is that somehow we started to understand each other as a team as time went on. Because they gave me my playlist on Sunday. They said, this is your playlist. Leo Mani said, Paul, here's your playlist. And then I was playing this song, and all these songs never resonated with me because I was the youngest between the two.
Yeah.
So when I used to sit with Wilson and Eddie, and they used to sit with their friends, and they used to like, oh, this song. I was like, clueless. I'm like gone. I don't even know who they're talking about. I know Boys to Men. I know To Me. I know these. And these guys would never talk about these guys. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, now, what am I? Do I have to be like them, or do I have to be not like them, or what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
So then somehow I started to do business studies. And I kept on, this word kept on coming in my head, change.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized, and I went to Leo's office, I said, Leo, can I please do my own thing?
Mm-hmm.
He said, Paul, no. Left the office. I came back after 3 months. Leo, can I still do my own thing? No. I left the office. And then as soon as he saw me walk in the office, he said, Paul, please go and do your own thing. Just leave me alone. And then I went there and I took all the music that I found relevant to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then little did I know that me was 10,000, a million other people that enjoyed it. And then that's where I kind of broke my sound between Nkosi. So Nkosi had his old school sound,
mm-hmm.
which is Signa's sound, and Zondi had a mixture of love ballads, but Zondi had a slightly older. Mm-hmm. And I went exactly for the younger target market.
Yeah.
And it just worked because we had a perfect market segmentation on Sunday.
That's exactly, how it happens on radio. If you have your own identity,
yes,
then you hit the mark. That's just what it is. So,
but also realize, it's a good team. it's your show before you and your show after you that
Exactly.
what will make you stand. And one thing with radio personalities now they don't understand is that you're not hot because you're a hot DJ. You're hot because of what comes before you and comes after you. If you have complimentary radio platforms or radio DJs or something, you can grow as a unit, and you'll all grow. Maybe he's got the afternoon drive and you've got the other drives that are not as prominent. But however, those shows really, add something to a growth of a good.
That's why we use words like link on radio, because literally radio shows are links, and we somehow we share audiences. Like you said, complimentary radio is what not everybody practices it, but they should, because that's what brings the numbers up for the station. So basically, when the station goes up, you as an individual will go up as well. There's no competition when you're working together.
So I'm gonna leave the question to you guys, because when it came to gigs from the radio or Sunday Soul Session gigs, it was non-existent in KZN. It was just a Friday and Saturday night clubbing, and then you'd get your slow songs played for 20 minutes a night. And that's where the only memory I have of slow music being played out and about in the late 80s, 90s, even throughout the 90s. Slow music was only played at the club at night for about 20 minutes. So to speak, you'd have a slow dance with whoever you had your eye on. Whoever had an eye on you, you'd have a slow dance. Girls would pick up guys would pick up girls, and that's where I learned a lot of R&B music. Especially, like, my first slow dance was Karen White's Superwoman. A girl came to pick me up for that song.
Wow,
and all I did, it was my first time at a nightclub, and all I did was go and stand and watch the DJ all night. And but no, this was the friend that my friend's bigger brother took us, and it was his friend that I think took pity on me and said, "You're standing all night, let's dance," kind of thing. So the one, yes, and it was Karen White's Superwoman. So I'd never forget that song, and it always stuck. So I'm going to leave the now to, especially you, Amon, to give us a good synopsis, because you're from Pretoria, and R&B Soul Sessions originated Joburg, Pretoria. Hence, it's so huge today. So before the biggest radio station in the country commercialized it, there was Radio Bob. There was. And there was Springbok Radio. So yeah, you'll take it for us, and because that's where it originated. Sunday Soul Sessions in South Africa originated in Pretoria. No.
In terms of okay, yeah, he'll pick it up. In terms of radio consumption, yes, Radio Bob was playing a whole lot of R&B, but they were playing R&B throughout the week. So the days were the same, according to my recollection. The days were the same. Monday was the same as Tuesday. Different songs, obviously, but the sound was the same. Even the Sunday sound wasn't as slow, all the way slow throughout the day. But yeah, they introduced a whole lot of R&B, especially 90s R&B. They introduced a whole lot more boy bands and girl bands, like the Boys to Men's that we're talking about, and the SWVs and the TLCs. They introduced all those, to the market, to, I guess, the Botswana people at the time, the homeland. But you said the recollection about the first song, I'm a Superwoman. So you can't get it out of your head, because it's what the music brought to you. It attached you to that moment, right? For me, I remember high school, and I used to save up, because every time I washed my dad's car, he used to give me like 10 rand, whatever. My brother, used to have his own cars as well. I used to do those chores just to make money so I can go buy albums. Right, so I went to Musica at the time. They still existed. I had to go to Musica like every other week,
like twice a month I would go to music just to go get one CD each. Like I remember my first CD that I bought. Mary J. Blige was the 411. You know, and then yeah, Boys to Men was there as well. It was a cassette. It was a cassette, and I had to buy a CD because the tape deck got messed up. My first one was the 411, and I remember like clear as daylight how it went. I had the money. I knew it was 79 rand. I had 80 rand plus fare money to go to town and come back. I did that, got the album, came back, and throughout the street, and plus we had this nice hi-fi at home. So throughout the street, I would play that, and people would ask me, "What are you playing? What is that? What is that?" And that's how they got introduced to, Mary J. Blige.
I want to ask you a question. Who came up with the name Sunday Soul Sessions? And where was the first Sunday Soul Sessions event? The first one. You guys, I'll give you $100. Whoever answers that question, no, $200.
Have no idea. That's why we here. Have no
I
idea.
have no
That's why
idea
we
too.
here. Because, as I said, Sunday Soul Sessions was happening around South Africa at households,
It wasn't
at
branded,
homes. When did
Yeah.
it start that somebody said, okay, whatever you're playing at home, stop playing it at home. Come out to this venue. We're going to play it for you. You're going to have drinks and food while we play what you've been playing all this time at home.
with company.
So let me give you our version of the Sunday Soul Sessions and how it started. So Zondi and I were sitting.
When was this?
Yeah, I can't remember. That's when I just joined the station. Maybe 2 years after that when I joined. Don't ask me when.
The early 90s.
Yes, don't ask me when I joined. So Zondi and I were sitting back and we were saying Mtirara, and I said, Zondi, he said, how is it that the house guys got gigs and we don't have gigs? And I said, but people don't listen to soul and R&B on a Sunday. He says, no, Mtirara, that can't be. So he said, okay, let's just think about it. And that time our figures were just going up. Every time the figures came out, we just went up and up and up.
Yeah.
And some people thought that we were witched at Metro because
Yeah.
while other shows were going down, we were still just going up. We were finding this. Every time they say this is the furthest that you can go to in listenership, we broke that.
Wow.
Every single Rams.
Yeah.
So then Big Danny Bino was on Saturdays, sorry. So we said to Big Daddy Bino, let's team up together and do something. You can do the house part, we'll do the R&B and soul part. None of the venues. I mean, no venue would wanted to start it. Every venue is like, no, traditionally we play a house. Every
That's it,
venue.
yeah.
So Big Daddy Bino went home, smoked a blunt. Okay, sorry, he didn't smoke a blunt. He went home and he had a conscious thought with his inner self. And then he came back and said, why don't you guys call it the Sunday Soul Sessions? And I said,
Wow.
okay, I'm like, okay. I said, Zondi, Sunday Soul Sessions. It sounds nice. Then, between Zondi and myself, we got a call from Divine Lounge. Benza at Divine Lounge. He said, guys, it's never been done. Why don't you come to my venue and you play exactly what you're playing on air? I've got 2,000 Rand for you.
Wow.
We said 2,000 Rand? We there. That's when it started. The first Sunday Soul Session was there, and we had a crowd of maybe about 20 people.
Yeah.
And and then we said, let's do it one Sunday. And we were learning, we didn't know what to play and all that type of stuff. And then he said, no, come back the next Sunday. Came back the next Sunday, it grew. We were there for maybe about 2 months.
Where is the venue?
Rosebank, Divine Lounge.
Divine Lounge in Rosebank, yeah.
And then then Nkosi was like, hey guys, what are you doing? I said, yeah, this is what we're doing. And then the first real proper paycheck, Jack Buddha Mamalodi.
Wow.
He called us, he said, guys, how much you getting? 2,000? I'll give you 5.
Wow.
That's how the Sunday Soul
That's when it
Session started
started.
from our point of view. And then what happened over time, then Nkosi joined, and then we just carried on. And it just went from one venue to the next. And that's where we met all these young guys.
Yeah.
Brian Mafati, Mr. Mashata, we met all these guys, and they were just there. And that's how we commercialized from our sense. So I'm not so sure if there's another brand that did exactly what we did, but I don't know.
For me at the time, I was not even at Metro. I think I was at Y, if not 947 at the time, because it was something really amazing to me, like to see R&B do what house has been doing for so many years. And every time I saw or maybe heard the feedback, because I mean, social media wasn't that huge at the time. Every time I heard the feedback, people were word of mouth always brings about change. It brings about that people open their minds to what is happening because they heard a friend or a family member say, I was there, so therefore you need to go experience it. So what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to get at is the fact that I was on another radio station. The power of soul and R&B was felt there at a white radio station. Me being a black presenter there, I felt the power with you guys doing what you were doing, and I was there. And I knew this thing is going
So
far.
just to take it back, Paul, would you say, right, okay, you guys, Big Daddy Bino coined Sunday Soul Sessions. You guys implemented it, all right? That's your version. So could we also put something else on the table and say, okay, but there was jazz sessions that was going on at venues and clubs? No?
Not that. Okay, look. Maybe that was done, but it was never commercialized. We commercialized the entity. We said this is what we do on air.
People are coming to it.
This is where we go to, and this became an event, and the promoter charged a fee at the door, and then from there we went from one venue to a bigger venue to a bigger venue to a bigger venue. I mean, we went from what? We went from Jack Buddha to Taliban to Marula San. Marula San, we did 10,000 people.
So hence I'm saying,
so-
because that's the earliest memory I have, that Pretoria became the hub and the center of R&B soul sessions in South Africa. That you'd get numbers every Sunday, mainly in Pretoria area, till this day.
There's a whole lot of Pretorians that, the biggest fans of the soul and R&B, right? And most of them, if you listen to music with people from Pretoria, they will actually, give you your flowers, and they will school you all the time. They will pull out LPs, or they will pull out CDs, or whatever it is, but they will ask you if you knew it, even if you're on radio. Say you're hanging out like you're hanging out now. It's a Sunday and you're visiting a friend, and maybe the brother loves music. They'll say, come sit here and play you a whole lot of music.
Something I wanted to ask you, because you were around in that era and you knew about it. Before Paul and them came on Metro on Sunday, there was a very, very, very popular guy, Grant Shakwane, on air.
Yeah, on Metro, yeah.
And he used to do the more of the jazz kind of R&B.
It was the station's jazz event, but he was like, I would say, hosting. Because most of the time when
so
radio
he
stations
wouldn't
have his-
physically DJ
No.
outside of the radio.
No. Like there would be
Yeah.
live bands, there would be if memory serves me well, I've never seen a jazz DJ play jazz, but it was just live bands. But Grant would be in the forefront introducing,
And then-
with Treasure.
Treasure
They would
Shabba,
be there,
Treasure-
you know what we do when we have station events. We
Because-
get a microphone and we speak to the crowd, that kind of thing.
Because I know with memory, there was, when it came to R&B soul, it was more jazzy, with the likes of Shadow Twala, Grant Shakwane, Bertha Chiruma.
But that was on radio, Ismail.
Yeah, I'm talking about off air.
Yeah.
Would be events that they would MC, not DJ though.
Yeah, but those would be jazz. Like, the
Yeah.
Morotele Park jazz events. They would have jazz there, and jazz artists would be there performing, like Selayalo Sulukas.
We would
live.
love some input. So just in the comments, drop your recollections, drop your comments, drop your inputs, please. We would love. There's part 2 of the podcast coming up, and then there's part 3 of the podcast coming up, where we will interview and have discussions and talks with other role players within the R&B soul industry here in South Africa.
Just to add to what Amon just said, I think the difference what he's trying to articulate is that those events were station-driven events. What we did was commercialize non-station events. So we took what we did on air, we commercialized into an entity, and from an entity it generated a business. And from today, that's why you have many entrepreneurs who are DJs that can actually do this and live off this as a. So it's a job. So it's a business that we started from scratch, never knowing that there'll be legs to it.
So basically, if you take your music seriously or take your music knowledge seriously, and not play whatever you feel like you want to play when you're in front of a crowd, and actually play for the people, you will grow. That's what Paul is saying.
So in closing, on part one of our podcast on the origins of Sunday Soul Sessions, ladies and gentlemen, we are sitting with the originator of commercial R&B Soul Sessions.
So let me just tell you something about business. If you can take something and monetize it from point A to point B, there's something that comes out of it. It's called profit. So if you can monetize, that's profit. So for any DJ out there, if you can monetize your time and it comes out to profit in a day, guess what? You're a businessman who has to pay tax.
You were closing, Ismail. I think I'll give it to you to close up.
No. You continue. I was just saying. So in closing, we'd love your comments. We'd love your input. And of course, your experiences. When did you first go to a Sunday Soul Sessions? When do you remember Sunday Soul Sessions? Like your very, very first Sunday Soul Sessions. Who were the DJs? What were the events? And maybe you have a different story to me, to Paul, to Amon when it comes to R&B Soul Sessions. Maybe you guys in your hood, in your city, you guys were doing it already. And it's like, yeah, what they were doing, we were doing it already. And but were you getting paid for it? Were you getting paid for it? All right. So, and then we're going to grab a couple of guests in our next podcast. And that's about it for now.
If you have questions, why don't you send your questions to us, and let's just see if our guests would be able to answer those questions. Let's just see if we would be able to answer those questions. But that's it for now.
I just think also nominate which guest you'd like us to have on the show. And maybe you can ask them questions on your behalf as to what they think about the Sunday Soul Sessions, or what do you think about Soulful Sunday, or do you think about, what is it? There's so many new names, eh? Soulful Sunday, Sunday Soul, Sunday Afternoon Sessions, Music Sessions.
Slow jams, R&B, Sunday sessions. And of course, we would also love your input on where you think Sunday Soul Sessions is going. What would you like to see happen at Sunday Soul Sessions? Do you want maybe live acts coming in? Because I see DJs are now also singing the songs. So maybe we'd get the original artist to come through and sing the song than the DJ singing the song.
I'd like to actually broadcast at a venue. I'd like a venue owner to invite us. And hopefully we can actually do this live, and hopefully get, an inspiring DJ out there to come play with us at a venue of your choice.
There you go.
As long as the venue owner pays, by the way.
Yeah. We'll try to do the next podcast at a original Sunday Soul Session venue. And so the next podcast on the cards is to talk to role players, current DJs, and their memories of Sunday Soul Sessions. And then the final one will be the third one, where we talk to the current guys, the guys that have just jumped on to Sunday Soul Sessions, and how they got in, how they see it, and what's the future of it. I'm Ismail Abrams, the DJ man, your ambassador of R&B and Soul. You'll find me on Metro FM, midnight to 3 a.m. Monday to Friday.
Nagalina ki Amon Mokoena wana umang otampana mo Motsweding FM 12 to 3 p.m. Monday to Friday. Arkopaniko.
And guys, my name is Mtirara. You can catch me on the same radio station as Ismail Abrams, just 3 hours before him.
Done.
That was nice.